Welcome back to another exciting adventure of Shido's ever-growing harem. A guy who is blessed by the angels and keeps on meeting divine concubines everywhere he goes. His superpower, you guessed it, rizzing them up and kissing the hell out of them. Keep watching to learn more of his wild antics and absurd shenanigans, cause Shido got all the babes screaming. We continue the story with our beautiful time princess, Kurumi, who was feeling a bit desperate after chasing down the spirit of origin. The ultimate battle between good and evil was upon us, and the clones were gearing up to stir up chaos if need be. Inside the spaceship, Shido was explaining his numerous deaths to his harem waifu. These gorgeous ladies were dumbfounded and appalled. To even imagine their darling Shido getting injured was a tragedy, let alone hearing of his demise. To make matters worse, they weren't willing to accept the spirit of origin was evil, since after all, that was their source. Moreover, Kurumi was evil and wanted to steal Shido's ability, snatching him away from their grasps. The redhead Kotori interrupted their train of thought to point out how the spirit of origin could be a girl named Mio. All of this upset Naya, who was looking mad fine and regretted losing her ability Raziel, which was able to tell them everything that happened in the world. Hoshimiya suggested going to the past and finding out, since she has the ability to unlock his memories. More specifically, her ability allows her to open any doors, including his mind palace. The rest of the diva girlfriends objected, fearing for his health and sanity. What if Shido went crazy? Who'd take over his harem? Well, I'd like to volunteer, since these ladies are one of a kind. Just then, he summoned Hoshimiya's divine artifact, Michael, and used it to unlock his memories and travel to the distant past. As soon as he arrived, he met the spirit of origin, but immediately woke up to witness his secretary, Rain, alongside the worried wives who were ready to whoop him silly. Is there any other anime character that's more blessed than Shido? Go ahead, I'll wait. Things started to heat up when Origami suggested kissing to invigorate his spirits. Soon after, the entire atmosphere of the room changed and Hoshimiya came to apologize. However, Shido forgot everything he saw and let them all down. Even so, Kotori told him not to worry and instead prioritized his safety. Elsewhere, the mad Gojo copycat, Isaac, was feeling livid since all their attacks were being thwarted by Kurumi. He couldn't fathom what happened until his subordinates suggested her time magic. If that's the case, he intended to spam their moves until she exhausted all her energy. All of a sudden, his shadow clone mistresses showed up with the head of Kurumi's clone. It seems she was caught snooping around and Isaac decided to send a message. He told the others how he plans on killing Shido, if it's the last thing he'll do. Why is this man so determined to kill an innocent little kid? Oh yeah, his harem collection, I nearly forgot. Meanwhile, Kotori told her annoying little brother not to get ahead of himself. And that's when Kurumi's clone phased through and passed along the urgent message from Isaac. She told them how DM was going to attack on February 20th. And this time around, they were serious and were willing to go all out to destroy everything he stood for. Moreover, the main Kurumi wasn't aware she came here today and told them this was nothing but a courtesy, since she shared the same feelings and held a crush on him. Before she left, Shido also had a message for the main body and told her how he was grateful. Soon enough, he'll come to save her and steal a kiss. Oh man, this man has insane levels of RIZZ. Meanwhile, Rain was looking through her phone while Kotori was planning a strategy to defend their base and protect their cherished husband. When it came to Shido, these waifu were willing to lay down their lives if need be. The amount of loyalty he gathered is bonkers. Just then, the chairman, Elliot, popped up and addressed the threat DEM posed. Since he was longtime friends with Isaac, he knew all his strengths and weaknesses, and told them not to take him lightly. He even suggested taking out the head of the snake if they wanted the entire operation to come crumbling down. The AI, Maria, suggested helping with the plan and finding the whereabouts of the evil dictator. That's when Nia went ballistic and told them all to shut it, since Isaac stole her Raziel and transformed it into Beelzebub, the omniscient book. Therefore, if they blurt out their plan, might as well send him an email while they are at it. Oh man, how were they supposed to defeat an omniscient enemy? Nia was starting to feel too cocky, and Maria decided to teach her a bitter lesson. She's kinda cute when she's mad, won't you say? Elliot promised to help them, and elsewhere, Kurumi held her clone at gunpoint. And boy, oh boy, is she getting hotter by the minute? She is certainly my type. Her clone was about to receive the boot, however. She informed her of Shido's message in a theatrical manner, forcing the main Kurumi to blush. She then warned the clone to die in the battlefield and make good use of her talents. Meanwhile, the army cadets were approached by Mana and Origami, who tried convincing them of the disaster DEM was planning. But then again, all this talk about magical spirits sounded like a whole lot of baloney to these military Gauls. They considered them loony and told them to buzz off. That's when Origami threatened her on the spot and left in a hurry. This show is starting to sound like peak fiction, don't you think? In the meantime, Hoshimiya was learning to cook alongside Tuka, who seemed like an absolute pro. After all, the easiest way to a man's heart is through his belly. Am I right? Nia, on the other hand, was playing a fun game of naming non-erotic words that could sound seductive. And I'm starting to like the sound of this. Some of the words they mentioned were quite bizarre, like Machu Picchu, for example. How is that supposed to be sexy? These guys were strange. How did Shido even choose them? Hold up, did she just say Kissinger? As in the politician? What a weird fetish. Soon after, Nia started talking about the day she met Shido, and all of them chipped in to share their wholesome experiences of their night in shining armor. How are they not jealous of each other? Can they simply share a man and not feel any sense of envy or resentment? I wonder what spell or hypnosis he placed them in, because one thing's for certain, these girls are smitten. They received a phone call from Tuka, who invited them over to cook. Back at the spaceship, Kotori was making sure everything was operational and ready for the upcoming war. Maria gave her an attitude, but Shido came to her rescue and told her not to worry. After all, this guy has an army willing to die for him. Why is she so worried? Soon after, the army in question arrived alongside the meals they prepared. However, let's just say they tasted questionable. They each looked super adorable taking a bite, and I'm starting to feel a tad bit envious of Shido, who was being pampered like a spoiled king. They even suggested feeding him. Oh man, that's not fair. Later that night, Tuka came to complain about her roommate's sleeping habit, and Shido wasn't fazed by this, since he already knew. Oh, you sly dog. Even so, he was too busy thinking of Kurumi and how he'd save her. If he sealed her powers, there is a possibility he might deter her mission. As he was complaining, Tuka sat beside him and served as his human pillow. Wait a minute, is Tuka his favorite waifu? Aside of Kurumi, that is, who was his special ex. He started encouraging her bravery and loyalty and made her feel truly unique. Take a lesson, boys? That's how it's done. The following day, 3 beauties were being stalked by a douchebag who refused to take no for an answer. They started bad-mouthing Shido, and that's when they heard the alarm. It seems trouble was brewing around them, and the ladies started freaking out. Meanwhile, DEM started their invasion and brought around 30 ships. Kotori took the opportunity to rile up her gang and gave a motivational speech to inspire them. Now that's how you stir up trouble. Even so, they only had 6 ships against their 30, and things were looking really bad from the get-go. I wonder how they'll manage to gain victory. Nia felt optimistic about this, including the twins and everyone involved. This made Kotori emotional, and Nia jammed Beelzebub's signal, allowing them to freely discuss their plan. The twins suggested storming the HU, and Hoshimiya dispelled the idea. Kotori agreed, and that's when Mia told them of how they were using an artificial intelligence as well. Oh man, DEM came prepared. Mana and Origami started feeling worried, and that's when Maria suggested attacking them head-on, catching them off guard. Kotori wasn't willing to let Shido fight, but the approaching ships were quite threatening. Isaac was feeling arrogantly confident, since this seemed like a David and Goliath battle. He gave the captains the order to unleash the fighter jets, and that's when Kurumi showed up out of nowhere, blowing them to smithereens. Now that was badass. Even the military joined in to help out and unleashed hell upon DEM. Even so, Isaac wasn't worried and continued laughing like a maniac. However, his opponent was none other than Kotori herself, the mad genius. Her battle IQ was quite impressive, and she unleashed the spirits onto the battlefield, who were empowered and emboldened. Kurumi's clone was full of herself and got stabbed in the back, while the other made fun of the shadow clones, calling them mass-produced. This was an all-out brawl, and upon seeing the spaceships, the military cadets started freaking out. This was way beyond their paycheck. That's when DEM gave them commands to attack the spirits and forced them to go against Shido's crew. However, they were betrayed and Hoshimiya had to intervene to save their worthless asses. This girl was certainly menacing, beautiful, but menacing. This military newbies have never seen a battle of this caliber, where angels fought against one another in a struggle of dominance. The skies were lit with aggressive clashes, and negotiation was not a feasible option. The only viable option was violence, and only the Supreme were heard. It seems that Shido's Weifu gang was on the offensive until Ellen started to show up. That's when Elliot decided to join the fray and left everything to his secretary. She asked him to leave the battle and run away. Wait a minute, is she trying to elope with him? What was she even thinking? Back at the battlefield, Ellen was interrupted by what seemed like a younger version of Elliot. Meanwhile, the shadow clones created by Beelzebub attacked the soldiers and showed them the true might of mages. Even so, Tuka and the twins came through to thwart their efforts, but the odds were against them. Without delay, they introduced the star of the show, the man, the myth, the legend. Give it up for our boy, Shido Uu. As they scorned their efforts and unleashed their attacks, Shido caught them by surprise and confessed his love to them. This move forced them to succumb since they fell into his trap. Since they still possessed Nia's feelings, they were secretly in love with him, but didn't know it. Also, since Shido's ability allowed him to seal spirits who fell in love with him, this man was running the gauntlet blowing air kisses, like they were sharp rifles. The twins were impressed and decided to leave him be. That's when he ran into Kurumi, while Origami had her hands full. Just then, the cadets shot at Artemisia, since they realized DEM was the real threat here. Hoshimiya caught her off guard, and Mana came through after destroying the fighter jets. The cadets felt confused, and that's when Shido realized the real Kurumi was in front of him. She quickly eliminated the threats around him and told him to stay focused. How does she expect him to concentrate with her gigantic melons shooting out? Either way, they tag-teamed and started decimating the shadow clones one at a time. Together, these two were unstoppable. Who is capable of stopping time magic and sealing magic? I mean, seriously. All of a sudden, he confessed his love to her and aroused her inner jealousy. That's when he suggested going to the past and destroying the spirit of origin by himself. He promised to correct everything and rewrite history for the better. This man sure has high ambitions. She was in a state of disbelief, but had no other option but to believe. Without realizing it, the shadow clone launched a lethal attack and Kurumi's clone had to save her from it. Soon after, she was smitten with rage, having lost a troublesome comrade. This clone was different, since she was the one who warned Shido of the war and defied her orders constantly. Even so, it still hurt seeing her vanish. Afterward, Kurumi reminded Shido of their competition and agreed to give him his kiss if they won against DEM. Our boy agreed, and just as they were about to shake, the spirit of origin emerged from Kurumi's body. We were then suddenly flashed back to Shido's past, where he encountered a gigantic meteor crash in the middle of the city. It left an enormous crater the size of Yamama, and that's when he saw the spirit of origin hovering above. He took her back home where Mana ran into them smooching. Afterward, he explained the situation to her, and after hearing her sneeze, she started glowing and immediately transformed. Elsewhere, news reporters were studying the crash site, while the spirit of origin learned to speak in a matter of hours. Did she really read all of that in one sitting? Color me impressed. The siblings started fighting amongst one another, and who gets to keep her. But alas, the smartass started feigning ignorance and tried explaining her background story. All of this gave her a headache, and Shido took the chance to hit on her. Mana suggested handing her in, but Shido had already fallen in love and wanted her around. That's when they introduced themselves to her and asked her what her name was. Unfortunately, she was a blank slate. Left with no option, Shido called her Mio, and this made her blush. Moreover, they gave her their last name and called her a sister. Our adorable alien started weeping tears of joy, and afterward, Shido took her on a date to the arcade. This man tried his best to gift her. This whole notion of love was brand new to her. The following day, our worthless hero was practicing his flirting skills on himself, and before he realized it, she popped in and heard everything he said. Now how awkward is that? Mana was surprised to hear this, since she never expected Shido to make the first move. As Mio started blushing, Mana got up and called her BFF, Haraka, to help with the upcoming date that is. Our girl came prepared and showcased her. Wait a minute, That lollipop reminds me of someone. Isn't that Kotori? Later on, Mayo went to the date looking fabulous and had our boy starstruck. He didn't know what to say and decided to take her to the beach. She took off her sandals and immediately jumped into the water. The two started dancing together and got really close to one another. As he stared into her eyes, she sneezed and ruined the blissful moment. Even so, they laughed it off and walked back home. However, upon seeing Isaac in the car, she made a run for it and was cornered by the men in black. Even so, she jumped off the bridge and escaped their sight. Unfortunately, Shido was injured, but Mio used her abilities to heal him. She then explained how they tried capturing her before, but Shido wasn't having it and promised to stay by her side no matter what happens. She then ran into another stud, who looked like Elliot in a way. Shido tried defending her honor, but Mio started lashing out. After hearing her story, he told them to run and enjoy the rest of their lives. Unfortunately, Isaac and his men found them in a narrow alley. He held his sister hostage and threatened to kill her. Left with no option, Mio suggested giving herself in under one condition. They let Mana go. But our boy was smitten and tried running away with her. That's when he got shot from behind and saw his life flashing before his eyes. Mio lost it and went berserk upon seeing her loved one perish. She obliterated the town and gave our boy a kiss. His body then vanished into thin air. In the present, the spirit of origin, also known as Mio, emerged from Kurumi's body and started talking to Shido. The hopeless damsel tried fighting back, but at this point, all her energy was drained and she fell off alongside her clones in a beautiful orchestra. That's when Mio transferred her energy into Shiryu, revitalizing his memory and reminding him of everything that happened. Kotori, alongside her crew members, were in shock, nay, in a state of disbelief. Rain looked suspicious, and Maria tried electrocuting her. However, she was standing still like the endgame boss and revealed how they were both the same specimen. Upon hearing she was the spirit of origin, Kotori started crying intensely and gave the orders to kill her on sight. This girl had nerves of steel, to be honest. Rain teleported to her counterpart and started emerging into one powerful being. Yes, the true form of the spirit of origin. His first girlfriend, Mio. She started confessing her love to him, and Shido was startled by all of this. He then continued to apologize for leaving her, and she insisted on having him back at any cost. Soon after, Shido scorned her efforts and demanded she make things right. Even so, she had no option and did what she believed was right in order to get him back safe and sound. Tuka and the twins came to his aid, and that's when Mio teleported our boy out of there. He ended up falling on top of his classmate and ended up in a remarkably pleasant position, if I must say. But the urgency in his voice freaked everyone out, and that's when he started acting like the MC. The students held the teacher and told him to escape, and that's when our boy summoned a portal and ran. Meanwhile, Tuka and Mayo were attacked by the clones, and the Spirit of Origin summoned a divine flower to thwart their attack. With a single attack, she wiped all of Isaac's forces. Afterward, she suggested Tuka to back down while Hoshimiya and the military cadets were trying to block Mio's flower attack. Despite their resistance, her attack was a one-shot, one-kill move. Origami told them to retreat, while Ellen was knee-deep in battle against Elliot, who knew this guy was super powerful. He was literally toying with her at this point. This was personal for her, since he stole her sister and eloped. What a sneaky weasel. Did this guy have the same level of RIZZ Shido possessed? These two started chatting like old-time buddies and forgot to solve matters with their fists. Come on, fight already. Ada girl, keep on attacking. Let's see who is stronger. In the meantime, would Tuka just attack her already? Alongside the twins, she gave it her best shot and kept on bashing Mio relentlessly. Even so, her defensive barriers were on a whole other level, and they couldn't even lay a finger on her. Just then, one of the twins was stabbed in the back and her spirit force was gobbled up. Shido tried approaching them, but was bombarded by an intense aura emanating from Isaac's presence. We were then flashed back to Isaac's past, of a time his mother died when he was just 10 years old. Despite the melancholic nature, he was feeling happy. What a freak! Elsewhere, what seemed like a young Elliot was practicing magic with his sister, Ellen. Isaac came to support them, and after downplaying their efforts, he ended up making the poor girl cry. This guy was a menace from a young age. No wonder he ended up as a dictator. As they were walking back, they kept on talking about invaders and how they'd protect themselves. Later that night, their village was burning down and Isaac stopped Elliot from going on ahead, since he had sisters to protect. As the houses burnt down, Isaac was seen smirking and suggested eliminating every human in existence. Besought with grief and anger, Elliot agreed and vowed vengeance alongside the mad prodigy. Afterward, Isaac was adopted and inherited their entire estate after their untimely departure. He then called upon his comrades in arms, and they made it their mission to pull off a Thanos. Using a powerful device, they were about to wipe out the entirety of human civilization. I wonder what this weapon was capable of, and before we knew it, Elliot triggered a gigantic tornado that created a massive shockwave, destroying everything in sight. Wow, that was next level. In the aftermath, they accidentally summoned the spirit of origin. Back in the present, Isaac kept provoking Shido, who felt weakened and vulnerable. He told him he planned on consuming Mayo, but prior to that, he was going to serve as an appetizer. Upon summoning Beelzebub, Shido reciprocated with everything in his possession. The twins and Tuka were still facing off against Mio, and at this point, both siblings were caught lacking and ended up forfeiting their life to the vile witch. Tuka tried holding her ground and was saved by Hoshimiya. She started lamenting the loss of the twins, and Mana went ahead to destroy her former partner. Meanwhile, Ellen was down for the count, and Elliot was toying with her emotions. He feigned an attack and destroyed her gear, but this caused her to lash out, since she wanted to die by his hands. Despite her annoying remarks, Elliot refused to do it and knocked her out cold instead. This guy was a true hero through and through. Mio, on the other hand, went crazy by activating her Bankai. I wonder what it's called. Wait a minute. This isn't a Bankai. It's a domain expansion, since she considered it a territory which she can control. Shido's waifu didn't care and decided to go on the offensive, however. Their attacks backfired against them, since this was her domain and they played by her rules. Hoshimiya's spirit was gobbled up and the rest tried running. However, their path was blocked and she used teleportation to remind Mana of her memories. Origami tried blasting her away, but she countered the attack and kept on destroying the spirits without fail. As the fighter jets were coming down one by one, Kotori couldn't believe her plans were crashing, and Maria didn't help either. Nia tried assisting, while Shido was unleashing insane levels of spiritual energy. Tuka and the rest had their hands full dealing with Mio, while the military cadets made it to the spaceship. They handed the wounded soldiers to them and were debriefed of the situation by Commander Kotori. Quite the prestigious title she gave herself. A middle school student leading an entire army, who would have thought. They saw their captain and started freaking out since he was a distinguished individual back in the days. But look at him now, cowering before a tiny little brat barking orders at him. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. She taught him a lesson and ordered everyone to get in place. This guy was quite the simp. Maria interjected and launched a barrage of missiles at them. That's when Nia started freaking out, since Mio's angelic attack was nothing like she's ever seen. She called it an instant death beam, and Kotori couldn't wrap her head around all of this. She commanded the cadets to protect the civilians and asked everyone if they wanted to quit before things got serious. Despite her stern warning, they were loyal to her and were willing to die in combat. The situation started escalating quickly, and Kotori transformed then, unleashed all her might into Mio, giving Tuka the opportunity to attack. Even so, Mio ended up killing both Origami and Tuka in one swoop. The spaceship was crumbling before her eyes and Mio teleported behind them. Kotori tried pleading with her and used emotional tactics to get to her. However, this didn't work, and her spirit was gobbled up right then and there. Meanwhile, Shido was facing off against Beelzebub's clones and suddenly teleported towards Isaac. Oh wow, he could use mimicry. All of a sudden, he was pinned to the ground and Isaac informed him of his plan of world domination. His reasons were unacceptable to Shido, who couldn't fathom deriving pleasure from pain. It's called masochism, my dear friend. Just then, Natsumi came to his rescue and Shido commanded them to kill him immediately. The witches were reluctant, but Shido asked them to trust in him. They used their powers to empower him, and he unleashed a lethal strike using a demonic sword. The blast was easily repelled by Isaac, but Shido had some tricks up his sleeves. He used a Kamehameha to land a critical strike on the cocky prick. Serves him right honestly. This was a lethal attack, and Shido took the opportunity to unlock Beelzebub. Afterward, he decided to spare him, even though he was his sworn enemy. What a loser, am I right? Hold up, did Mayo actually kill them all? I'm starting to like this girl. Meanwhile, Tuca was falling inside the void and met the divine version of herself. These two were looking stunning, and the spirit explained how they were absorbed into Mayo's domain. All of them were gone besides Shido, and this news didn't sit right with Tuca. She begged her to help and transport her out of this accursed world. Despite her plea, the divine spirit had no power and told her to succumb to the will of their mother. Is that what they referred to Mio? Mommy? Tuca still wanted to fight and tried relying up her mirror version. As they got closer to one another, I was almost sweating balls here. Shido, on the other hand, was distraught. He lost everything he cherished in a single day. The harem he gathered, the waifu he loved, all of it. Mio told him not to worry and decided to brainwash him using her abilities. However, Tuca appeared out of nowhere and asked Shido to fight back. My guy didn't even get the chance to mourn their death, and that's when Mio revealed that Tuca was her most powerful daughter. She was more aware and consciousness of herself. Moreover, she was the only one Shido named out of all the spirits. If you know anything about anime, giving a name is almost equivalent to sharing powers. Even so, Mio was unfazed by her threats until she witnessed her true capabilities. Who would have thought she'd land a hit? At this point, Mio decided to give it her all, and these two went at it like bitter rivals. Regardless, she wasn't sufficient, and Shido decided to empower her. This allowed her to go plus ultra and put up a decent fight against her mommy. She still couldn't lay a finger on her and transformed into a higher form as the battle progressed. Tuca kept on evolving at a rapid rate. So much so, she landed her first critical strike on Mio. Despite her fervent effort, Mio unleashed her ultimate trump card. This erased Tuca from existence, and Mio continued to heal her injuries and commend her valiant efforts. Afterward, she approached Shido and told him to succumb. But my guy was willing to fight back and used every tool in his arsenal. He launched everything at her, but was no match for her. Soon enough, she was struck from behind, and it was none other than Kurumi. Hold up, wasn't she killed? How is she still here? This is also confusing. Wait, this was a clone she triggered prior to her death. What an ingenious move, Kurumi. Well done. Now, the fun is about to start. But Mayo is a lot stronger than she expected. Shido stood there paralyzed as his loved one fought for dear life. However, she was stabbed to death, and everyone he cared for disappeared one after the other. Shido started shedding tears and felt the loss of all his spirits. That's when he used the Angel of Time, a gift passed down to him by Kurumi to launch himself into the past. He sat there contemplating his options, and he went back to the time Tuca came to comfort him. As he held her in his arms, he started crying like a baby and was comforted by her wholesome gaze. I told you Tuca was his favorite. Hold up, why did he ask Rain on a date? She tried knocking him down, since she wasn't interested, but Shido wasn't going to let up and kept insisting like a desperate playboy. Rain was completely puzzled but agreed. Kotori, on the other hand, couldn't believe her ears. Coming from the future, telling her Rain was the spirit of origin, this was too much to handle all at once. Even so, she believed him and decided to let the others in on this secret. However, Origami called and told him she heard everything. Kotori pointed out a button on his coat, which was used as a hearing device. All the wives gathered up and seemed pumped up about the whole situation. Kotori told them not to blow their cover, and Shido went ahead to speak with Kurumi. However, her clone showed up and promised him they were all alone. He started off by telling her she dies in the upcoming battle, and convinced her Mayo was a threat far worse than she imagined. Since Mio was residing inside Kurumi's main body, they had to be careful moving forward and keep everything above table. The clone continued to tease him and gave her gratitude. Shido reciprocated. And elsewhere, Rain ran into a nervous Huka who couldn't handle her excitement. Rain had no clue they were conspiring against her and acted like she always did. However, Tuca hit her with a devastating question, asking her if she liked Shido like that. After receiving the answer she wanted to hear, she left. And the following day, Shido was caught by surprise by a sneakily gorgeous Rain. The crew were watching on, and Kotori gave the orders to get the date started. Everyone was in a state of disbelief about the truth, and Nia tried calming the situation by cracking jokes. Shido, on the other hand, felt stuck, and the crew voted on what he should do. They discussed matters amongst one another and determined Rain's characteristics and what she'd like. They decided to play it safe. but Naya kept provoking everyone alongside Origami. Kotori had enough of all of this, and Shido took the initiative by complimenting her beauty. Rain didn't expect this sort of reaction from him, but decided to place her trust in this fragile kid. She proceeded to hold his hand as he blushed, and the crew were gauging her happiness level, which was slowly rising. They didn't know what to make of the situation, and the spirits looked on as Shido took her to a bathhouse. They cast another vote, and at this point, this seemed more like a game than an actual date. Perhaps a simulation of a date. Also, how were they not jealous of her stealing Shido from them? These waifu sure are supportive. Shido got ready and lost his focus upon seeing Rain naked. The crew started crying out since they censored her gorgeous melons. Afterward, they got into the bath together, and Rain sure had some profitable assets. Shido was feeling quite nervous and couldn't hold a decent conversation without stuttering. Well, I don't blame the kid. She was absolutely stunning. Rain started asking him about his background. Unfortunately, Shido lost the majority of his memories. Even so, his words moved her, and she gave him a warm embrace with her remarkable physique. Meanwhile, Isaac was planning to launch a preemptive attack, since Beelzebub informed him of the previous loss. Now that's a broken ability for sure. Later on, Shido took Rain to the beach, and the entire situation was super romantic. Isn't this where he took Mio on his first date? I won't lie, the view was marvelous, and Rain was smitten by his charm. She ended up falling asleep on his shoulder and felt ashamed upon waking up. She laughed it off and tried playing it cool, but Shido jumped straight to the point and asked her if she could love him. Talk about balls of steel. Ha! He leaned in and started making his waifu envious of their embrace. Just then, her likability dropped, and she instantly figured out he was from the past. Wait a minute, how did she find out? She confronted him about it, and DEM came at an unfortunate time. Shido tried begging her to leave with him, but she was madly in love with his former self and refused to let it go. Kurumi shot a bullet at her and started laughing manically. Didn't her clone warn her of the impending doom? Rain wasn't bothered by all of this and stood there like a real G. Kurumi, kept on shooting until history repeated itself, and her spirit emerged from her body. Basically, nothing changed, it seems, and the spirit of origin merged once again into her higher form. Mayo was reborn once again and told him not to worry, but a sudden headache kept bothering our boy. He teleported back to the spaceship where his waifu surrounded him and informed him of the upcoming attack. Kotori decided to fall back, and that's when Shido saw his school under attack. Hold up, is Isaac really stooping that low? Kotori tried negotiating with him, but our guy was hell-bent on massacring everyone. The robots were stricken down by Tuka, who made it just in time. The waifu gang started pop down and unleashing hell upon them thanks to Hoshimiya's portal. Even so, Maria warned them of an upcoming attack, and that's when Ellen came storming into their spaceship. Mana tried blocking her path, and Shido decided to follow suit. However, he was surrounded by Beelzebub's shadow clones, and Kotori grew worried. She told them to defend Shido at all costs, and Mana came to his aid. Hold up, where was Elliot in all of this? Wasn't he supposed to take care of Ellen? The odds were against them until Kotori transformed and came through. Upon seeing her, Shido and Mana were fired up, and the three siblings were ready for the smoke. Isaac thought this was frivolous, while Elliot was just looking on. What happened to this guy? Wasn't he the hero of the previous battle? I'd never thought he'd chicken out in such a manner. Then again, the battlefield is quite terrifying. Shido was cut amidst battle, and Kurumi showed up out of nowhere looking to stir trouble. Wait a minute, wasn't she supposed to be dead? All of this is getting really confusing. Either way, she was going all out and started causing mayhem. She even caught Isaac lacking and landed a critical blow on our poor villain. Ellen and the others decided to fall back, and that's when Shido was lost for words. Kurumi explained how she transferred her mind and body to one of her clones and ended up killing Beelzebub. She proceeded to gobble up the spirit power and transformed into an evolved form. All the waifu joined them and wanted a clear explanation. That's when Mio unleashed her domain expansion and apologized to Shido for failing to kill the rodents. However, this time around, everyone stood their ground and promised to protect their husband at all costs. Even so, our boy decided to use the infamous talk no jutsu to convince Mio to give up. He told her that he loved her, but she loved a remnant of himself which was dead. The boy she once knew is lost and gone, never to return. He neither has the memories or the personality of the guy she lost. Despite speaking the truth, Mio was reluctant to listen to his complaints and started acting like a victim. This upset Shido, who screamed at her and acted like a monster. Afterward, she unleashed her attack, and Shido told everyone to pin her down since he had to kiss her. Kurumi ended up carrying him out and told him how his plan was a foolish endeavor. However, after hearing the truth of his past, she ended up kissing him and transferring her power. You can tell Kurumi was the most loyal waifu out of them all. Shido bid her farewell and headed towards Mio feeling like the next Superman. He bolted towards her and kissed Mio passionately, lighting up the sky and dismantling her domain. Even Isaac was healed in a miraculous manner. Ellen cursed his recklessness, while Kotori was feeling exhausted. Nia and the rest tried looking inside, but Kurumi came by and stole the show by summoning Raziel. Poor Naya, they really threw her under the bus, huh? Meanwhile, Shido was back at the famous beach, alongside Rain, Mio, and his former self. Wait a minute, what's happening here? Why is this show so complicated? It's almost like the writers were purposefully trying to throw everyone off. Rain explained the situation to him, and all of them started having fun like they had zero responsibilities. Mio was with her former lover and Rain with the current Shido. But what does all this mean? This doesn't feel like a dream. So, is it a simulation? Or did they travel into an alternate universe? The real Shido felt like all of this was a hoax and asked Mio to end this, since none of it was real. He apologized for her loss and gave his condolences, but this was diabolical. Meanwhile, Kurumi was narrating everything to the waifu, and it made me wonder how powerful Raziel actually was. Just then, another evil spirit force was felt, and DEM was up to no good as usual. What was Isaac planning now? A guy who doesn't know how to give up. Meanwhile, Shido was growing desperate as Mio kept on refusing his plea. She was obstinate and insisted on staying here, since this was heaven compared to real life. She didn't want to leave, and Shido wasn't willing to take no for an answer. He asked to seal her and continued to rizz her up, but this guy failed miserably. His former self wasn't having it and started going crazy. After all, he just came to life. Who would blame him? But in the end, he realized he was just a fragment of their imagination and tried convincing Mio to go with the real Shido. What is tangible is always better than what's abstract. Just then, their domain started collapsing, and Rain revealed this was Isaac's doing. It seems the mad scientist was trying to give birth to a new spirit of origin, and this time around, he wanted to use their energy to turn himself into one. Well, imagine how powerful this guy would be as the spirit of origin. Wait a minute, did he seriously plan all this out? I think I underestimated him. Mio did a complete 180 and asked Shido to help her destroy Isaac before it's too late. Afterward, they shook hands and collapsed the domain. Shido unsheathed his sword and waged war against Isaac, who summoned a demon king. Hold up, was that a new domain expansion? Okay, at this point, this seemed like a Jujutsu spin-off. This was Sukuna versus Gojo, to be honest. Soon after, Mio encouraged everyone to work together and asked to put their trust in Shido. The battle was underway, and things were getting hectic all of a sudden. I won't lie, the animations and visual effects were next level. Everyone was going plus ultra, and this was a scene straight out of a Marvel movie. As Isaac unleashed his power, Nia came through and saved everyone using her original power. Finally, they got to use Nia. They really did throw her under the bus. With her support, everyone felt invigorated and decided to give it their all. Now this is what we paid good money to see. I won't lie, this was on par with the OGs of this game. I wonder what their budget was like for this one. Despite their relentless attack, Isaac was still standing and decided to unleash his trump card. Fortunately, Mio came to his rescue and told him to use the power of all his spirits. But before he could say another word, she went ahead to sacrifice herself for the greater good. She confessed her love to him and jumped straight into the void. As she stood face to face with the madness that was Isaac, she cursed his existence and told him he was an absolute prick. My guy took that personally and unleashed his ultimate attack. As these two heavyweights clashed, Mio wasn't sufficient to match his power and succumbed. However, the former version of Shido embraced her and welcomed her back in his arm. Isaac, on the other hand, was on death's doorstep. Elliot came through to bid him farewell for old time's sake. I guess neither Mio nor Isaac came victorious of that clash. Was all of this worth it, though? What did this man have to gain? Oh, well, I guess that's the end of his story. Meanwhile, Shido was surrounded by his waifu gang, who broke the news of Mio's demise. Kotori tried consoling him, and a bright light showed up throwing a teddy bear in his hands. My guy started weeping like a wimp and mourned the death of his loved one. What a tragic end to a wonderful story. I hope you liked the amazing story of Shido and his crazy adventures. If you'd like to see more amazing content, please leave a like and subscribe to stay updated.